Yes, it's here, perhaps our most requested urban legends video so far. With a population of over 82 million people, it's no surprise that there are a lot of scary stories to go about in Germany. It has a rich history dating back centuries and beyond. If you've liked our European urban legends videos so far, then I think Germany is at the heart of all of that. I think it has some of the scariest stories I've seen so far, and you know that I've seen a lot now, but let's see what you think. My name is Danny Burke, and this is the top 10 scary German urban legends. Coming at number 10 now, we have the Moorbach Monster. The town of Wittlich is said to be the last place in Germany where a werewolf was spotted and killed. The story goes that a soldier named Thomas Schweitzer raided a farmhouse there with some soldiers. They murdered the family, and according to legend, as Thomas killed the husband and sons, the wife laid a curse on him. "From now on, at each full moon you will change into a rabid wolf," she cried. From that day on, he began to change. He became more brutal and murderous. His appetite for violence and blood grew too much, and his fellow soldiers actually left him. He eventually abandoned civilization altogether and chose to live feral in the woods. Locals began to talk of the Wolfman who lived out there in the trees. Then the killings began. The Wolfman was blamed for the brutal slaughter of people and livestock. Nobody suspected it was Thomas until he raped a local girl called Elizabeth. A group of villagers confronted him and demanded that he pay for his crimes. He fled but was confronted near the village of Moorbach. They killed him, and in order to stop him from returning as a werewolf, a shrine with a candle was placed at the gravesite. Legend says that as long as a candle is kept burning there, the creature shall be bound to the grave. 9 months later, Elizabeth gave birth to a son which, to her relief, showed no sign of the curse and whose descendants still live in the area today. The story doesn't end there though. In 1988, a group of US Air Force personnel were returning to a local base and passed by the shrine. They noticed the candle had gone out, and they mocked the local superstition that a werewolf was now on the loose. That evening, sirens went off when someone activated the sensor's perimeter. The guards reported seeing a large wolf-like creature standing on its hind legs. It stared for a moment at the guard before jumping over a 3-meter high fence. They tried to use dogs to track the creature, but the dogs refused to follow the scent. Make of this story what you will, but the dogs certainly knew something we didn't. Next up at number 9 now, we have Waldneil Hoster School. This building used to be a place of learning until the Nazis arrived there. They claimed the Franciscan brothers who ran the school were charging too much and kept suing them because of it. Their plan worked. The brothers filed for bankruptcy and left the place in 1937. After that, the Nazis stepped in. They turned it from a school for disabled children to an extermination center for them. There were 200 beds where disabled miners stayed before being gassed with carbon monoxide. They did it slowly. A death could be drawn out over a week. When the war was finally over, it was found that 97 children had been killed. Their causes of death range from wasting to pneumonia to cardiovascular weakness. In the years since then, people have reported hearing the sounds of children crying in the hallways at night or weeping where their beds used to be. Some have even described the sound of wails of pain echoing down through the years. At number 8 now, we have the Marksman. The story goes like this. One day, a marksman went out hunting for deer and wild boars. However, the dark autumn forest made it hard to see them. He was approached by a shady salesman who covered his face. The man offered the marksman 7 bullets with one condition. The first 6 bullets will hit whatever the marksman wants to hit, but the man gets to choose where the 7th one goes. The marksman agrees. He quickly becomes famous in the town, bringing home kill after kill. He catches the eye of the prettiest girl in the town and they fall in love. Soon though, all 6 bullets were used up, and when he shoots the 7th, it goes astray and hits his love in the chest, killing her instantly. The salesman then appears to the grieving marksman and reveals himself as the devil. He tells the marksman that if he lives a good life now, he will be reunited with the girl after death. He tries this but soon falls in love with another girl and marries her instead. 1 year to the day after the fatal incident, the marksman rode through the forest where he came to a clearing. Skeletons were dancing around cold flames there. One of the skeletons belonged to the girl that he first loved. It entranced him and he danced with it into the night. The next morning, the villagers found him and his horse dead at the edge of the forest. Moving on to number 7 now, we have Babenhausen Barracks. This place is known as one of the most haunted places in all of Germany. As you can tell from the name, it was originally a barracks. Now it's a museum, but that hasn't stopped the hauntings there. According to local legend, on certain nights the ghosts of German soldiers, some of them in World War II uniforms, can be seen wandering the grounds. Lights will flicker off and then on again at the same time as voices coming from the basement. If all of that wasn't enough, footsteps have been heard along with the occasional command barked in German, presumably for the soldiers who once lived there. Locals say that if a soldier happens to visit the museum and pick up a telephone, a woman can be heard on the other end talking backwards. What she's saying will be completely unintelligible. It's not German or English, but it just sounds backwards. What's the reason for all of this? Well, some say it's because the barracks is built on the site where a witch was burnt at the stake by soldiers many years ago. In death, she now seduces and kills any soldiers who dare to get close to the barracks. Next up at number 6 now we have Der Grossmann. This creature's name translates to the tall man. He's said to live in Germany's Black Forest, a place named by the Romans for its impenetrable darkness. The tall man may be the basis for the Slenderman urban legend that I'm sure you've all heard. He is a tall, disfigured being with only white spheres where his eyes should be. They say he is a fairy who chases bad children that find themselves lost in the forest. He never stops chasing them, even beyond the woods, unless he catches them or they tell their parents all the bad things they have done. Even then, that might not be enough. One account from 1702 came from a man who lived in the Black Forest. He said, "My son came into my bedroom yesterday screaming at the top of his lungs that the angel is outside. I asked him what he was talking about, and he told me some nonsense fairy story about Der Grossmann. He said he went into the groves by our village and found one of my cows dead, hanging from a tree. I found nothing of it at first, but now he is gone. We must find my son, and my family must leave before we are all killed. I am sorry, my son. I should have listened. May God forgive me." Don't know about you, I think that sounds a lot like Slenderman. Moving on to number 5 now guys, we have Frankenstein Castle. Yes, this place was the inspiration for the original Frankenstein novel. It was built over 1,000 years ago and inhabited by various members of the Frankenstein family until they died out in the 1600s. The last member of the family was killed in a chariot accident on his way to visit his one true love, Anne Marie. She was left waiting for him and died of a broken heart. Now, she is said to wander the castle looking for her lost love while he wanders elsewhere, both of them trying to find each other in the afterlife. Another owner was Conrad Dippel von Frankenstein. Amazing name. He was said to be a real-life monster in the form of an alchemist, scientist and grave robber. He used to experiment with bodies trying to reanimate the dead, yes, just like the original story. The townspeople eventually stormed the castle to stop him, but before they could catch him, he drank one of his own potions and died. Now the creatures he created are said to roam the land nearby, and his ghost still haunts the many rooms looking for eternal life. Next up at number 4 now we have the Naxxraia. This terrifying creature is basically a Germanic vampire. They are cursed creatures that require humans to survive, but it's not in the traditional vampire way. They don't suck blood, they simply devour whole bodies, kind of like a zombie vampire hybrid. You cannot become one from being bitten or scratched either. They are most commonly created when someone commits suicide or dies from an accidental death. If a large group of people die of a disease, the first person to have died will become a Naxxraia. When they first wake up, they devour their whole family, or if they get desperate, they even start eating themselves. Some people believe that they leave their graves, shapeshift into a pig, and then visit their family members to feast on their blood. Perhaps the most chilling way that these creatures kill people is by their shadows. It's believed that death will instantly befall anyone who is covered with the shadow of this creature. Another reason to keep an eye out for any moving shadows at night. Next up at number 3 now we have the Pied Piper. This is perhaps one of the most famous ones on our whole list. In 1284, in the German town of Hamelin, a story emerged that was spread across the world. The town was suffering from a rat infestation when the Pied Piper arrived. He claimed to be a rat catcher and promised the mayor that he could save them all. The mayor was desperate and agreed, promising to pay the Pied Piper for all of his work. With that, the Pied Piper pulled out his pipe and walked around the town. The rats came pouring out from their hiding places as he played. They were transfixed by the music, following its sound like zombies. The Pied Piper then lured the rats into the Weser River, where they all drowned. Despite completing the job, the mayor refused to pay the Pied Piper. He said it was a scam and that the Pied Piper had actually brought the rats in there in the first place. The Piper stormed out of town, vowing his revenge. One day he returned when all the adults were in church. This time he played his pipe and attracted all of the town's children. 130 children followed him into a cave and were never seen again. Next up at number 2 now we have the SMS Emden. This ship was completed in 1909 and sailed all over the world before being sunk just off Germany's northern coast. It was returning from a long journey around the whole world. On the day of its return, loved ones of the sailors were gathered at the harbour ready to welcome them home. However, the harbour master refused them entrance due to a personal grudge. As they waited, a storm brewed. It got worse and worse, battering the ship until it could hold out no longer. The Emden sank and there were no survivors. The distraught families cried out in pain across the harbour. In the centuries since then, many locals report the same thing. On a full moon, especially on a stormy night, the ghost ship of the SMS Emden can be seen bobbing over there on the horizon, trying desperately to stay afloat, but always to no avail. And finally, number 1 now, we have the Druid. In Germanic folklore, this is an evil, nocturnal spirit associated with nightmares. They were said to take part in what's known as the Wild Hunt, a surge of spirits and supernatural beings that were said to bring war or plague or death to anyone who witnessed it. They are often said to be female in appearance, resembling a young woman. They appear in people's houses when they are asleep and sit on them, crushing their mind in their nightmares and their bodies in real life until they give out and die. Once the deed is done, the Druid changes appearance and becomes old and ugly. She is pale and thin. Her feet have 3 large toes, one of which is pointing backwards. Perhaps the most scary thing about a Druid is that nothing can stop it from getting to you if it wants to. They are said to be able to enter anywhere, through a window, a crack in the door, even a keyhole. They can even transform into a feather. According to some people, she will never speak but is always recognizable by the sound of her footsteps as you drift off to sleep. It's thought that a Druid is actually an ancient princess who has been unable to find rest for 1,000 years because she couldn't find a prince. Now she crushes sleeping men as some sort of twisted revenge. Okay, we finally did German urban legends. I'm glad we got around to that because I really love some of them. I actually find it quite hard to pick and choose for this one because there were so many good ones. Perhaps I can use them for a part 2. As always, it's up to you guys. Thanks for watching. As always though, my name is Danny Burke and I'll see you all in the next video.